They called it Manland. 30 minutes of pure electricity. About an amped-up Mr. Fix-It with a flair for tools and disaster. Home Improvement spoke to the great divide between the sexes.
We got a lot of letters. This is just like my marriage. This is just like my husband.
No.
But this old house had all the juice. A half hour of power. The year was 1991. The Army was in Kuwait. The economy was in recession. And all across the U.S., budget-conscious Americans were fixing up rather than trading up their homes. From house to house to this old house, husbands were tooling up to do battle with wallboard and molding. It was at this time that Disney got a tip on a hot new comedian out of Detroit, Michigan, named Tim Allen. The high school class clown, Tim had cut his comedic chops in college TV projects.
This is gonna be perfect. The class.
She agrees. We're really hitting it off. Why does that other dude keep looking over here? He had to get his own girl. Quit bothering us.
He had done his first stand-up gigs at Detroit's Comedy Castle.
You ever wonder how they know that cat food tastes like what's in the box? It says, you know, meow mix introduces the liver and chicken flavor. Seafood buffet flavor. Who's testing this stuff?
Tim took what he had seen around the family dinner table and turned it into an act, a celebration of men. It all came together for him in one of his first shows.
It was Akron, Ohio. I can't give you the date. It was what I used to think, it was like Scotch and sirloin night at the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company banquet at a club in Akron. And no one was listening. They were just eating beef and drinking brown liquor. And it was all guys. They said, well, why don't we just talk about what's in our garages? It was at least a pause of the knife through the beef. Huh? And they made that noise. They said, well, we'll talk about garages, but everybody's garage, let's face it, should have a drain in it. Yeah, that's good. And in this room, I realized in Akron, there's many things that men like on a grassroots level together that they never talked about. You know, garage, hanging stuff on pegboards, high-powered machines, and I said, this is so obvious to me. I can't believe I'm not talking about it. I love motors and V8s. If it runs, it can run better with no muffler. That's my motto.
From Detroit to Los Angeles, Tim soon hit gold with his new material. 2 Showtime specials caught the eyes of Disney executives Jeffrey Katzenberg and Michael Eisner. They made him an offer he couldn't refuse, or so they thought.
Went to one of these big conference rooms at the big long table. It was really intimidating. And they offered me a lot of stuff I didn't want. And as my attorney at the time said, there's no word more powerful in Hollywood than no. And it was really legitimate. He says, no, Jeffrey, but thanks. And it was like, wow. Get me a handgun and a grenade.
Eventually, Disney's heavy artillery worked. Tim signed on for the show. But who would help him create it? Disney turned to veteran producer Matt Williams of The Cosby Show and co-producers David McFadzean and Carmen Finestra.
We were kicking around the idea of the father as hero. Let's do a series. Let's put Dad, an all-American dad, at the center of the movie.
The only problem was Matt wasn't so eager to work with Tim. As one of the executive producers on Roseanne, he had been burned by stand-up comedians before.
Jeffrey said, okay, would you at least take a lunch? And I said, okay. So I went and had lunch with Tim. And within 30 seconds, it was like I was talking to a brother. We started trading stories about our wives, our childhood, growing up in the Midwest.
You could just feel the chemistry. It was like we were in the writer's room already. In fact, Matt, walking out of that lunch, turned to me and he said, this will be a top 10 show.
There was no question. It had a pulse already.
And Tim's point of view dovetailed perfectly with a movement quietly brewing in America, the men's movement. It called for fathers and sons to walk tall, to accept their primal maleness, beating drums and dancing around campfires in the night. Robert Bly's bestseller, Iron John, A Book About Men, would become a sort of research handbook for the writers.
Iron John did not inspire the series, but it informed the series. That book said that men, since the Industrial Revolution, are lost. In the agricultural community, you work side by side with Dad. You learned how to be a man by being next to Dad. Well, now Dad's out of the house all day. Dad's away. So who is there to teach you how to be a man?
What I think we were doing was simply trying to show how men thought and why men and women have difficulty understanding each other.
We actually were sitting in a room one time and asking each other questions like, does your wife do such and so? And we'd go, yeah. And go, why does she do that? I don't know.
Women are subtle, they send signals. Men never pick up on the signals.
And finally, I forget who it was, but one of us looked at the other one and said, I know what this show's about. Men and women shouldn't live together. It just doesn't work. And then, you know, we all laughed and said, well, okay, what holds them together? And we said, well, let's be radical here and create a functional family on television. And it was a family that loved each other.
So that would be the blueprint. Husband, wife, and kids split by two very different ways of looking at the world.
All right, I'm gonna let you guys in on a little secret, all right? Women, as we know them, are born without a face. Listen to me. Women are like a Mr. Potato Head. Yes.
Tim was trying to raise 3 boys. Yeah, we're gonna dance naked in the woods around a campfire and howl at the moon. And she was trying to domesticate 3 future husbands. So there was always a conflict on how do we raise these kids.
No running in there.
Cover the ball with both hands so you don't fumble. Go on.
The series had been framed out, but it still lacked one key detail, a show within a show. Tim would be Tim Taylor, the accident-prone host of his own cable TV show, Tool Time.
This old house and the whole Bob Vila thing was part of it.
I wanted Tool Time to be like this old house on steroids, where everybody hated me.
It wasn't a direct ripoff. We didn't want to go and spend every week in a different house talking about molding. So we said, let's contain it, put it in a sound stage, and really make it more about a celebration of power.
Of course, the show couldn't be just about routers and drill bits and exploding dishwashers. They had to cast a family. The key was the role of Jill Taylor, Tim's wife. Initially, it did not go to Patricia Richardson.
Well, we had cast a woman named Frances Fisher, who was terrific. I mean, came in and did this great audition, and they had great chemistry together and really liked working with each other, and we started rehearsing.
But in her scenes with Tim, it seemed like she was pleading not to touch the dishwasher, which Tim wanted to power up. And the audience kind of didn't respond well to it. It was almost felt like they were saying, can you leave her alone? What are you, a wife beater? Come on. So we were sunk.
At the last minute, the producers had to scramble for a replacement wife. An actress from a failed 1989 TV series caught their eye.
2 days before we were supposed to shoot the pilot, we saw a tape of Pat in an episode of FM, and we went, wow, this woman is strong and funny and dry and great.
We wanted a strong wife. We wanted someone who would challenge him. We wanted someone who would hold him accountable. Pat Richardson is a very strong woman. She's a mother, which really helped.
But Pat had a small concern. She had just given birth to twins.
You know, I just was coming in going, guys, I'm nursing twins every 2 hours. I cannot start working tomorrow. I mean, they wanted me to work the next day and spend 4 days and go in front of an audience and shoot this thing.
She came in, got her script, went through her blocking, and we had our first run through. And it was like, oh my, it was instantaneous. You watched these two and you felt like they had been married for 15 years.
Where are you going?
Sears Summer Spectacular Sale.
You can't go. I've got this job interview.
What job interview?
Tim, do you ever listen to me? It was the last thing that I said in bed to you last night.
No, I believe, if you recall, the last thing you said to me in bed last night was, no!
You're thinking of tonight.
They just clicked. And I think part of it was because Pat is so strong. Because Tim, with more power, you know, if he didn't have a strong foil, he would have really come off as kind of a creep. But she kept him in check.
In fact, Tim soon found out that Pat knew how to throw her weight around, literally.
I was so intimidated by her strength
Well, I was so huge. I had like a 38D happening, you know? I'm producing a half gallon of milk a day at this point for twins. In the pilot, he was supposed to wrestle me down on the couch.
She pushed me down and jumped over the couch and pinned me. And there's no way I could get her off of me. And I said, this is embarrassing, and your knee is in my groin.
So we had to kind of pretend, you know, he kind of wrestles me down. But, you know, I was pretty strong. Let me up, let me up!
The honeymoon would be a while in coming, for Tim and Pat were no newlyweds.
It was like kissing your aunt. I don't know what your aunt's like, or your uncle.
Home Improvement was gearing up for production. It had its 2 leads in place.
I like taking things apart and fixing you.
There was only one problem. The star had never acted before.
It's apart, you know, and I can't do that with you and fix you and...
All I want is for you to be attentive and comfort me. Why is that?
Being a stand-up comedian doesn't mean that you're going to be a great actor. So yeah, anytime you go into a job and you've got a stand-up, you're thinking, well, this is hit or miss.
Disney sent me to acting school. They had an acting coach. But I think the only reason they did that was they want to make sure, can he memorize lines? I know that's what it was. I mean, they sent me these real serious acting coaches. I was doing really weird plays, real serious stuff. I had to cry and emote. And it was ridiculous for me. The guy says, beg for your life. And I'm going, I'm going to kick this guy right in the nuts if he says that one more time to me.
What we did was try to find good actors who could go to Tim, meaning Tim would always be in the center of a scene. He would never have to do exposition. The other actors always do the exposition. Tim just had to react. And that, we discovered, Tim could do great.
Certainly in the comedy profession, you're doing acting the entire time in very intense bursts. My comedy, anyway, I had to become that guy, and I had to sell it in 7 seconds. So I know how to get into character. What I was a little worried about was sustaining any kind of emotion.
Initially, when we would do emotional scenes together, he would call for a cut because he would start to cry. And it would so disturb him that I was crying that he'd be like, wait, stop, she's upset.
She scared Tim so badly a couple times in rehearsal that he kind of went, I think she's really mad. I mean, I think she's really, well, Pat's a good actress. I mean, but she would not back down, and she went face to face with him.
The one thing Tim couldn't fake was the kissing.
The original wife, Mrs. Taylor, was another woman. And she was a fantastic kisser, not that Pat wasn't. But this first girl they hired, she went after it, and I said, this is gonna be a lot of fun. I'm gonna like Hollywood a lot.
And then poor Tim, you know, he's had this really attractive woman that he's gotten to kiss all week, and he's having a lot of fun, and all of a sudden, you know, she's out of there, and in comes big lactating mother.
All the kissing with Pat, it was like kissing your aunt. It was like this. She goes, Tim, you can't. Number one, it looks horrible. Number two, it's repulsive to feel somebody's lips that tight.
To round out the family, Tim and the producers wanted 3 sons to create the ultimate masculine environment. But ABC had a different idea.
The network kept saying, oh, you have to have a daughter. And we said no, because we wanted Jill surrounded by this sea of testosterone. It's all boys. She's outnumbered, she's outgunned, she's gonna have to fight twice as hard.
So Tim Taylor would get 3 sons to teach the facts of life, how to grunt and flex and fix things around the house. A casting call went out to find the right boys.
Casting children, it's always tough. You see hundreds, even thousands of kids to find a handful of them.
We wanted Midwestern faces, you know, sort of open faces.
The very first person we cast was Jonathan Taylor Thomas. That was a no-brainer. He walked in and just bowled us over. And then we took him to the network, and he sat in the room with 18 adults and wowed them, and so he was in.
We said, hire him. Just hire him. You know, it was like, there was no question.
Even at the age of 10, Jonathan Taylor Thomas already had 5 years of acting experience. He was an old pro.
You realize that this was a young man who could make a line real and funny. And that's very difficult.
Are you saying this thing needs more power? Let me open it up. I can make this thing go faster.
Well, why don't we just save you the trouble and throw it up against the wall?
JT could see through Tim the way a smart little boy can see through his father.
So immediately, a lot of making fun of Dad was shifted towards Jonathan because he could, he scored.
The character of Randy was a chip off the old block, only smarter. Another young actor who had read for the same part was Zachery Ty Bryan.
I remember I originally went in for the role of Randy, and my first meeting was with Debbie Barilski, who was the casting director. And as soon as I walked in, I didn't even start the audition, and she said, "You need to read for Brad. You're more of a Brad."
He was just like the all-American kid. You just thought that this kid is right out of a 1950s sitcom. He just looked wholesome and healthy, and he was as outgoing as can be. And when he walked in the room, I remember Matt just tapped me and he said, "This kid should be in the show just because of the look."
The sweet, innocent youngest brother would be Mark Taylor, the one who idolized his father and, of course, got picked on by his older brothers. 7-year-old Taran Noah Smith tried out for the role.
He walked into the audition, big grin, beautiful blonde hair, innocent eyes, about 2 feet tall, and we said, "This is the kid."
You know what all those bars do?
Yeah, of course.
When we did the pilot, and we did the scene where Tim and he are gonna fix the dishwasher, and Tim sparks and burns himself and starts hopping around. And Taran just jumps in there and hops around with him, and you got these 2 half-naked men dancing in the kitchen. It was hysterical.
The sons were cast. Now it was time to add in more men to the masculine mix, like Wilson, the barely seen next-door neighbor, the Socrates of the suburbs.
Tim pitched this notion. He said, my neighbor in Michigan, he said, every time I talk to him, all I see is this much of him. He says he's on the other side of the fence. We go, "Hey, how you doing?" We talk.
I wanted a neighbor who we never saw, who was all about a voice and a personality. And really, it was this consciousness of man. That's the metaphor I wanted. You never see him. He really was supposed to be just a hat.
And we said, okay, let's make him the ultimate mentor, the mentor that the lost child can turn to.
Jill doesn't get the job she wants. I tell her not to feel bad. She gets angry.
Wilson was all the grandpas and all the great uncles and all the great men in your life rolled into one guy with a master's in psychology and behavioral psych.
You see, Tim, by nature, men are problem solvers, but Jill didn't want you to solve her problem.
She didn't?
No. She just wanted you to listen while she shared her feelings.
We had offered this role to somebody else. We had met somebody in casting who was younger than Earl, sort of a wilder-looking guy, more of the wild man. And then a week before the pilot, we got a call from his agent who said, "What do you mean he's behind a fence?" Well, I thought we explained that. No, we don't want to do it.
So we're scrambling, and we went through all the lists of actors. We started re-watching casting tapes, and finally somebody said, well, here's this guy in New York, and we popped him in, and we heard his voice. We said, okay, just fly him out. And of course, it was Earl, and he was perfect.
Earl Hindman would be the man behind the fence for almost a decade.
You really need a great actor to go, I'll stay behind a fence for 8 years. I don't have to be seen. That's very rare for an actor to feel that way.
Tim Taylor had a feisty wife, 3 rambunctious sons, and an all-knowing next-door neighbor. All the producers needed was a straight man, a tool-time co-host who could handle Tim's constant jabs.
It was modeled on the relationship between Bob Vila and Norm. The whole notion of it was, here is a guy who should have been next in line to run the show, who was co-opted by someone who was more entertaining and more flamboyant. But Al was the expert.
Rick Karn had worked in regional theater for years. He came to Los Angeles looking for work, but it was bad driving that got him his big break.
I first heard about a show called Home Improvement at traffic school. I was doing a Shakespeare play, and I came home and kind of like rolled through a stop sign and went to traffic school. This is so I wouldn't have to pay that ticket. And I sat next to this woman who was an agent, and over 8 hours, you get to know somebody. And she mentioned these guys that I had said that I had met a couple of years ago. She goes, well, they're doing a new play. So I called David McFadden, and he goes, yeah. And, you know, we would have called you, but you're not really right for anything. There's really nothing for you. But you know what? Come on in.
When the producer's initial choice, Stephen Tobolowsky, couldn't make the pilot, they offered Rick a temporary position.
And at that point, you know, I was going, well, sure, you know, any work, great, I'd love to. Do the pilot, fine.
Like any good craftsman, Rick would make the most of Al's small part.
I think he had one line in the pilot, "I don't think so, Tim," which wasn't a laugh line. And when Rick Karn took the line, he looked at Tim for about 3 beats.
And there's like this huge pause of me looking at him. The audience laughs at that. And then I said, "I don't think so, Tim." And the audience laughs at that. And I'm thinking, okay, yeah, I did that. I got my little laugh.
Luck would turn Rick's way when the original actor dropped out for good. Al's flannel shirt was his for keeps. With a family and a straight man, all the series lacked now was one more thing: a sexy assistant who knew how to handle a tool.
We had good sessions casting the Tool-Time Girl. I don't want my wife to know this.
I mean, we had everything happening in the room. I mean, it was Hollywood.
We actually saw Ashley Judd for the role, and we wanted to cast Ashley Judd in the role. You know, she was great, but her agent said, we think she has a movie career. We don't want to do this. So, well, so they were right.
And Pamela Anderson came in, and she was elusive and sort of playful. And when we put her into the overalls, you had sort of a, you know, a Wisconsin farm girl look. I had no idea who Pamela Anderson was.
It turned out that Pamela, the new tool girl, had been a Playboy model.
So we started getting letters from people all over the country, especially the Midwest, saying, this is a family show. How could you cast a Playboy centerfold? And we truly didn't know at the time. There were a number of surprises in putting this show together.
The producers were about to face the biggest surprise of all. Casting was complete, the show had been built, but Tim had a secret that Disney and ABC didn't know. Home Improvement was in danger, and it hadn't even premiered yet. During the summer of 1991, as Disney and ABC eagerly awaited the premiere of their hot new series, Home Improvement, there was a startling development. A tabloid was threatening a major revelation about Tim Allen.
We were barreling along. We did the pilot. We were getting ready to do the first episode, or we were in the middle of the first episode or something. And then I don't remember how I found out, but somebody said something about Tim being in jail. And it's like,
Well, we had asked originally, you know, way back at the beginning, any skeletons in the closet, and we're told there weren't any. I don't know, maybe not by Tim, but by representatives. And so shortly before the show, he kind of said, well, there's this one thing you need to know, which was rather major. Actually, I'd been in prison.
Tim was a convicted felon. He had gone to jail for selling cocaine.
I wasn't surprised. I mean, everybody that I knew, particularly in New York in the 70s and 80s, were doing drugs. I mean, everybody was doing drugs, selling drugs. And, you know, it was a real generational thing.
Well, in some weird way, it sort of made him an underdog that people were cheering for. He screwed up. He knows he screwed up big time. But it also, to use the kind of cliche, it scared him straight. He straightened out real quick, and he knew he had to do something to get his life back on track.
Matt and his team had to act fast.
The show was based on family values, so there was always a danger that people would turn against that.
And I talked to some of the executives at Disney, and I said, I encourage you, beat everyone to the punch, have Tim tell the story truthfully, honestly, and then let the public decide. And fortunately, that's what happened.
USA Today ran Tim Allen's drug trafficking story first, and the positive spin worked. A disaster had been averted. But soon enough, another crisis was brewing. The network now had a major problem with the show itself. Specifically, ABC focus groups reported that half the audience, women viewers, didn't like Tim's character.
And they put like 8 women in a room to watch the pilot, and while they're having their tea, they went, "Oh, God, he grunts, and he's, oh, I don't know, he's so mean, disgusting."
ABC came to us with all this information saying, you know, you need to pull Tim back, you need to make him not quite so masculine. And we fought it. We just said, no, 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 that's the center of the show. We think women are going to like that because they're going to recognize that in the men that they know.
All right, Al, let's have a drill, please. Woo! Look at that butt crack you got going there.
We had a butt crack joke in the cold opening, and ABC wanted us to take that out. And we said, no, you know, this is male behavior. Men make jokes like that of one another.
I think we got to start today by spackling Al's butt crack shut, huh?
Butt cracks are very funny. Butt cracks are universally funny.
On September 17th, 1991, butt cracks firmly in place, Home Improvement premiered on ABC. And right from the start, it was a winner. With a hot time slot right before Roseanne, Home Improvement would be the only breakout hit of the 91-92 season. All across America, frustrated garage mechanics and their spouses flocked to the show, taking up Tim's motto as their rallying cry.
You know, men, we want a job done right, and we want it done quick. What do we need?
Of course, Tim never seemed to know when more power was too much.
That is a man's dishwasher.
Tim's shtick, his masculine humor, caught on swiftly, especially his trademark grunt.
Oh, no.
That was all Tim, you know, Tim's ho. Yeah.
Again, when we heard this, I think we all thought, wow, guys are going to be grunting when they see the show. And they did. I mean, people would meet me. Full time, huh?
I remember they used to say, just pull it from the stomach. Just pull it from the stomach and give a little raspiness to it.
And the funniest part is to hear Pat try to do this, because she was totally inept.
Just rinse the dish.
The final trademark was visual, the groundbreaking graphic transitions.
And they became a signature for the show.
It was the thing that sort of set the show apart, and it gave people something else to talk about.
But if the grunting, the tools, the high wattage humor all brought viewers to the show, what kept them there was something else.
Most people mistake the idea that all you have to do is blow up a washing machine every week and you've got a series. It's not true. More power, all of this, that was the icing. The cake was the relationship between husband and wife.
Tim, this job is important to me. Aren't you excited about me going back to work?
Oh, boy, here we go. You don't have to feel bad.
Don't tell me how to feel.
The communication problems, the family dynamic, the day-to-day skirmishes in the war between the sexes. Home Improvement revealed the radically different point of view from the kitchen to the garage.
You are totally unwilling to accept responsibility for what I have accepted total responsibility for solely since we met.
Isn't there a statute of limitations on this?
Isn't there a statute of limitations on you being a complete bonehead? I mean, Joe would throw things at him, and, you know, Joe's really had a temper. These people have completely different opinions, and yet would still be able to compromise and come together and raise these children, have a sense of humor, and have a loving relationship with each other.
I think I'm ready to talk.
About
what you want to talk about that I didn't want to talk about?
I'm sorry I got mad and left.
It's okay.
On the set and off, the actors actually began to function as a real family.
You know, we were like brothers, you know, getting along, not getting along sometimes.
You know, we'd bicker and we'd get in little arguments, and our parents would have to get involved.
Dad and Heidi sit.
Could I call you right back?
Okay.
Hey, let it go. Come on.
Tim and Pat also are like a mom and dad. You know, Pat's, how's your school? Did you pass your test? You know, she knows all about our tests, and you had that algebra test. Did you pass? I got a B. Well, I want an A, you know.
Kind of later in the show, for a little while, I started smoking, and Pat was very concerned about that. And yeah, she definitely had maternalistic feelings towards us.
Tim was like a dad, but more of like a friend dad, you know, almost like an uncle.
Well, actually, I was like an evil uncle, because I had no responsibility for their upkeep. It was just, hey, you guys know how to do an arm fart? Where are your folks? Watch this. If you got a lick in here. Oh, look. Huh? Huh?
And they actually made that into a show. There was one of our shows where it's just all of us in the garage. You know, there's the dad and his 3 sons doing arm farts when mom walks in.
You guys ever had any fireworks in your lives? How about a BB gun? Come on outside. I turned these kids into responsible maniacs.
For all its success, Home Improvement was getting some lukewarm reviews from critics.
Well, some people liked the show. Others, you know, saw it as this big, stupid show where a guy grunted. And, you know, family shows are not normally known for, you know, critical raves.
I don't know if it was too lowbrow or too Midwestern or because it dealt with tools and it couldn't be smart.
A reviewer in one of the New York papers wrote that the show was not going to be a success, that it didn't have any chance, and the line was, because how many toasters can Tim Allen blow up?
A whipping post of the critics, a favorite of the public, Home Improvement would soon face its biggest challenge of all, when real life made its way into the show. All through the mid-1990s, Home Improvement would be riding high, climbing to the top of the ratings, winning several People's Choice Awards. Tool Time girl Pamela Anderson would leave the show to move on to Baywatch. Debbie Dunning replaced her. Jonathan Taylor Thomas became the series' heartthrob. And the show just rolled on. In fact, it beat Seinfeld so consistently, NBC had to move that show to another night just to give it a chance. With Tim Taylor and his family, America had found a home and moved right in. In fact, the furniture seemed a lot like their own.
My initial letters were all things about, it's like you're looking in our windows. It's, how do you know? This is just like my marriage. This is just like my husband. The fights that you have, the things that are going on, it's so real.
I forgot if it was from Cosmo or Glamour. It was one of the high-fashion female magazines. The editor wrote us a fan letter, and she said, I watch your show every week. I really enjoy it. And we were shocked. And she said, because every week I get to see how men think.
And fans got even more appreciative as Jill's character began to grow.
Of all the things that they had Jill do, I think the thing that seems to have had the most impact was me going back to school. Hello.
How was school?
Oh, it was great. I got my first A. I have had women come up to me in airports more than once and tell me that they went back to school because Jill did. I was very honored by that. I mean, I thought that was really terrific.
More and more after the first few seasons, Home Improvement began to tackle harder stories, the real stories of parenting.
Pat and Tim both were saying, you know, we need to deal with issues that parents are dealing with as deeply as we can go into them with a half-hour sitcom.
I was the athletic guy, but I remember I had the episode I got busted with marijuana, and those kind of situations happen in families, and Home Improvement was a good show for families to watch and relate and maybe get a piece of advice.
And we got lots of letters from parents saying, thank you, you're helping me to deal with the serious problem that I have in my family with my kid.
Another memorable show that left families talking was one in which Randy Taylor has a scare that he has thyroid cancer.
The cancer show came about as a result of something that happened with my son when we had a big thyroid cancer scare with him.
So you guys would treat me like this all because I might have to take a pill? I don't buy it.
Honey, we didn't want to worry you until the test results came back, but there's also a small chance,
A very small chance.
that you might have a lump on your thyroid that eventually would have to be removed.
So I need an operation?
A very small.
Would I have a scar?
A very small.
And oftentimes humor is the only thing that saves you from becoming absolutely morose as a parent.
The serious subjects weren't always about the kids. They also ventured into adult territory.
I thought the vasectomy show was one of our funniest shows, but also really educated men about why they should have one. Now, look, if I do this, I have to check into the hospital, go under general anesthetic, and have surgery. But a man has a vasectomy just right there in the doctor's office. It's much less invasive.
Let me tell you something. Anytime you're dealing with the downtown area, it's pretty darn invasive.
I called it Manland. It was, I said, because it was a female doctor. And I said, I can't have a female doctor looking in Manland.
How am I supposed to talk to a woman about what's going on in Manland?
Manland? Now you got a theme park between your legs?
Tim Allen was flying high. He had a #1 show, a #1 book, and soon enough, #1 films as well. Disney's The Santa Claus and Toy Story as the voice of Buzz Lightyear. Tim Allen, ex-convict turned comedian turned actor, was now the nation's biggest box office hit. When Home Improvement went into syndication in 1995, it drew in over $300 million, making it the second biggest TV moneymaker of all time. Tim had become a superstar. But he wasn't the only cast member enjoying success. Jonathan Taylor Thomas had an active movie career as the voice of Simba in Disney's The Lion King, and later in Tom and Huck and Wild America. Patricia Richardson co-starred in Yuli's Gold, Zachery in First Kid and Magic Island, and Taran in Little Bigfoot 2: The Journey Home. Still, despite the success, Rick Karn kept his day job, at least at first, as a real tool guy, a building apartment manager.
You know, it came to a point, though, when people would call me up and go, our sink's leaking, can you come down? And I go, okay, I'll come down. And I'd come in and there'd be like 30 of their friends. You see, I told you Al is our manager. The sink's not really broken. We just wanted to look at you.
But all that success couldn't last forever. Things were bound to change, and soon enough, they would. In 1998, Home Improvement found itself in its 8th season and running out of steam. The series was beginning to slump in the ratings, and a more unsettling surprise was in store. Jonathan Taylor Thomas announced that he was leaving the show. To the cast, it was a definite shock.
It was definitely going to be different. I used to hang out with Jonathan off the set all the time, too. We'd go hang out, go get coffee, we'd go to lunch together. So I wasn't going to have that anymore.
It upset Tim, you know, because he felt like, this is a family, you know, how could you do that?
We worked so well as a family, and the chemistry was so together with everybody. I got a little nervous, like, I hope it doesn't throw a kink in the dynamic of the show. Then I was having trouble. I was hoping that the audience would buy the fact that, you know, they sent him off to the rainforest to save the rainforest, which I thought was a little far-fetched.
Jonathan wanted to pursue other opportunities, an education for one, and he did by heading to Harvard. At the age of 17, Randy was written out of the series. To make matters worse, the show's ratings were now slumping big time. Frasier was pulling in over 15 million viewers, while Home Improvement drew only 10 million. In their heart of hearts, even the stars were getting a little bored with the show.
Jonathan Taylor Thomas left, wasn't even doing the 8th year. If we had done the 9th year, Zach was supposed to be graduating and leaving. You know, we would have had to find some excuse to keep him. What are we going to write about? We've done everything. We'd run out of stories and freshness and wanting to be there.
Tim and Pat both wanted to end the series. Desperate, the network executives waved money at them, lots of money. $50 million for Tim and $25 million for Patricia to do one final season.
I couldn't have gone on because it would have been about for the wrong reasons.
Everybody's just staying for the paycheck. I mean, everybody just wants to be there for another year because there's so much money involved by now that everybody just wants to do it for the money, and that's not a reason to do work.
Agents live for those kind of moments when you have a hit series and the contract expires with your star. You feel the salivation, there's blood in the water.
Yeah, I would have liked to have had the $25 million, you know, but I already made a lot of money from Home Improvement. I made enough to live well the rest of my life without working. I knew I'd want to work anyway. You know, do I need a Learjet? No, I really don't.
The home that Tim built would soon be vacant. The final show aired on May 25th, 1999.
The last day I was kind of numb. I kind of forced myself to go through, you know, suppress the emotions just to be able to get through it and that type of thing. I know everyone kind of did that. Just, you know, it just wouldn't have gotten anything done if everyone's crying during the taping.
I was the only one that cried, did you know? You know, it's just been such a big part of my life, and I mean, I was just used to every Monday through Friday, every morning getting up at 8 o'clock, going into work, coming home at 5 o'clock, going to soccer practice, coming home, and I was in such a pattern of my life that all of a sudden it was just going to change, you know?
I think I was blocking, probably, a lot of that emotion. I had already come to terms with that this was it. This was the end.
We weren't sure we were going to get through the last taping, that last episode, because even at the beginning, when Tim came out and started talking to the audience, he started tearing up.
All the emotion came out at one moment. I just burst into tears the last show. I have never in my life had such a flood of emotion. I came out and said, hey, this is gonna be all right, you know? We're just gonna do it like every other show. I stood out there for 2 seconds. I went,
Because we really loved each other. I mean, everybody, the cast, the crew, everything. So, you know, it was just sad to say goodbye to everybody.
Home Improvement ushered out the traditional American family sitcom. Like Norman Rockwell with a blowtorch, Tim Allen and his producers had rebuilt the living room comedy. But times were changing. A new generation of shows was on the rise. Shows about urban singles, like Friends, Ally McBeal, and Seinfeld. Yet the appeal of the tool-toting TV host, his family, and his 220-volt humor still lingers.
I still watch it because I'm a pathetic person. With my daughter, keeps them all on tape. And I have TiVo now. So I can tape myself over and over again and watch it with dark socks in my bedroom at night with the curtains closed and just wonder, why did I say no to that last year? Huh.
And to this day, the cast, like America itself, still wishes that it could go home.
I miss the family. It's just like I don't say, you know, you grew up, you had the couple Christmases at your home and everybody had Christmas dinner. Next thing you know, everybody's in college and gone. And it's really hard to get everybody back together again.
That's the thing when I watch the show now and I see the boys when they were really young, it just astounds me. They were so cute.
There wasn't a day that I didn't race to work. I was at work sometimes 4 hours early and stayed 2 hours late. I wanted to be there. You know, I wanted a house like that.